I'm not going to set a time limit on this. I have a murdered colleague, police officer, and we're not going to stop.
Every cop in America is looking over their shoulder right now. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They don't believe America's got their back.
I strongly condemn these recent and brutal police shootings in Texas and in Illinois. We have had 4 more Guardians slain, and frankly, our hearts are broken over this. I offer the families of these officers my condolences, and I ask that all of us come together and keep them in our prayers.
The Attorney General there also referencing a paper statement put out by President Obama on the recent killings. Speaking of officers killed in the line of fire, this year so far 28 officers killed by gunfire or assault. This is as of September 1st. Last year 32 officers by this time 2014, but in the year prior to that it was an 89% increase in officers killed in the line of duty. Meantime, murders by city, you can see several cities around the country where the crime is up significantly. These are murders again: Austin, Texas; Denver, Colorado; Milwaukee; St. Louis; and Baltimore. This as the Black Lives Matter group in Minnesota is still getting a lot of attention for one of the chants in their protest, and one leader reacting to that.
Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon! Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon!
He was laughing and joking with the marchers, so then the marchers kind of started chanting that towards him, and it was more playful than anything. So
so that was, yeah, you're saying that was in a playful context, that chant?
At that particular demonstration, yes, that was, because the officer was laughing and joking along with protesters.
What about all of this? Let's bring in our panel. Tucker Carlson, host of Fox & Friends Weekend; Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio; and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Tucker.
Imagine if marchers at a state fair had said the same thing, calling for the murder of a protected group of Americans. In other words, anyone who's not a cop, basically. The Justice Department would have swooped in immediately. You'd see a primetime address by the president. Imagine if instead of 28 cops being murdered, it had been 28 civil rights leaders over the last year. We would have a massive response by the White House. Instead, he issues this very tepid, heartfelt, I'll concede, but tepid and short statement from his conversation with the widow of the most recent slain officer. On the very same day he did that, he issued a very long proclamation, which was passionate and urgent, about National Childhood Obesity Month. I'm just saying, if the president appears to take sides in this question, it can be really dangerous. The last graphic you showed about the crime rate going up, that's the nightmare scenario. People move back to our cities because they're safe, not because we brought manufacturing back because they're safe. If they become dangerous again, everything changes.
Yeah, Mara, a lot of law enforcement officers, sheriff's deputies, sheriffs, speaking out now about all of this.
Yeah, look, I think that it's wrong to try to see which group is targeted more. We've had horrific murders, assassinations of police officers. We had 9 black parishioners killed in a church. I mean, enough is enough on both sides. And I think everybody should dial down the rhetoric. I think it doesn't get us anywhere to try to draw some kind of line between some stupid statement that was made by some protesters and these horrific killings. I think it's time that both sides need to come together. I think Loretta Lynch was right, and I think she came out and made a really strong statement today, and I assume that the president, now that he's back in Washington, from Alaska, will do the same.
Charles?
I don't see it as both sides of a coin. There's a big difference between somebody shooting innocent people in a church and shooting police officers, and I do think there's really a problem where the police have a sense that America isn't at their back, but what the police chief actually was saying in his own way was that it is the president, it's the authorities who don't seem to have their back. President Obama's reaction to every incident where there was race involved, starting with Professor Gates in Cambridge through the Trayvon Martin and all the way through, has always been to instinctively side himself against the authorities, to call them dumb or whatever, and to express his sympathies. He didn't do it in an extreme way, but with the supposedly aggrieved. And that's a message that the police have received. They've seen what happened in Baltimore, where they were essentially left unprotected. There is a reason that these murder rates are going up. That is because we're having a slow-motion police strike where police are either not going into the neighborhoods or pulling away in a dangerous incident or a confrontation. Because it used to be, if you were a police officer in a confrontation, your instant one thought would be, how do I escape alive? How do I protect the people? And now he has to think, how is this going to look on the video? How will I be treated tonight in the evening news? And how will I be ultimately treated by the legal system? And once you have to add that factor, the policeman is defenseless.
But if I could just say, I agree with everything that Charles said, but I think it's more than just about emasculating the police, which has happened tragically. It's also about politicizing crime. When you politicize crime, when you suggest there are potentially political motives, people have a right to feel frustrated and strike back, which the president has done, you get more crime. You saw this in the 1970s in the United States, particularly in New York City. You see it in foreign countries all the time, in Venezuela and South Africa. Pick a country with an out-of-control crime rate that doesn't have a civil war in progress, and you will find politicians who are telling people, look, you have a right to express your frustration, or imply that. I'm not saying the president's calling for more crime. I'm not saying that. But I am saying you should never ascribe political motives to what is street crime, and they have done that.
Here is what Sheriff Hickman said in Harris County, Texas over the weekend.
Our system of justice absolutely requires law enforcement to be present to protect our community. So at any point when the rhetoric ramps up to the point where calculated, cold-blooded assassination of police officers happened, this rhetoric has gotten out of control. We've heard Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Well, cops' lives matter too. So why don't we just drop the qualifier and just say lives matter and take that to the bank?
So back to your point, Mara, I mean, you're saying there's legitimate grievances in some of these communities and concerns, but to hear that stated that way is pretty powerful.
It's pretty powerful, and all lives do matter. Black lives matter, cops' lives matter. Why do we have to say that, you know, one matters more than the other? I think there's been so much violence. I think this is why voters are unsettled. I think this is creating a lot of anxiety around the country, but I don't think pointing fingers at either the police or the protesters is going to be the solution to this.
Look, the best index of the moral cowardice of our political leadership on this is the fact that Martin O'Malley, candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency, apologized for having said all lives matter when he was confronted with Black Lives Matter. When you have Democratic leadership do that and go uncriticized, that's appalling.
Next up, using drones to hunt terrorists in Syria. Plus, what is Russia up to there?